Well, hello, everyone. How are you doing today?
Aaron, it's your show. Both of you guys showed.
We're just waiting for the vampire in the corner to say something profound, and so far all he's doing is licking his teeth.
You guys froze me there, so I don't know if it's like the vampires or what it is.
It is. We're getting they know that we're doing this. We're going to expose them and all of their hidden secrets through Hollywood messaging.
I was actually more so focusing on Tom so kindly pointed out to me the other day that I need to stop breathing into the microphone when I'm not.
What are you talking about? This makes for the greatest audio
you're not as bad. It's like the sniffling where fucking Billy will legitimately like he will breathe like I can hear in those episodes. I'm like, man, you gotta. He's like, I'm like, Billy, you need to fucking stop breathing into the mic.
There's people that I game with on Twitch that I'm just like, either mute your mic or I'm gonna mute you. One of the two.
Something's going on. Something's been going on with your camera there, bud.
It's because my reflection doesn't show up on camera because I am the Nosferatu.
You gotta fix that shit, man. I'm gonna
camera's fine, you goober. Just go.
It's not my show. You know, one of you gotta bring it in.
It is so weird to not have you just randomly fucking yakking completely. But Aaron, go ahead.
I actually didn't think that I was going to have to intro the show. I was expecting Tom to take it away. When I heard Fangs mentioned as well, I really thought he was going to have some shit planned.
Yeah, I can plan out everything. I just want it's your guys' show, so I can say welcome. Welcome to the podcast. What are we talking about, everybody?
We're talking about the masters of insanguination, or exsanguination. We're talking the sexiest and gayest monster that's on the planet. And we're talking the laziest goddamn roommates you'll ever see if we're going by what we do in the goddamn fucking shadows here.
Yeah, I guess
we're talking vampires, everyone. How are we doing? The blood-sucking Brady Bunch.
I guess essentially it's like it's a classy House of Trash because this will be for both Aaron's podcast and Anton's. If I sound a little weird, it is because I am wearing vampire fangs. For this episode, they're kind of hard to stick in, but they're fucking working for what it is today. And guess what else I got?
Thomas was bit by a man that looked an awful lot like Nicolas Cage.
Can you guess what's in my cup? It's the blood. I'm drinking a Caesar, a spicy Caesar. It's appropriate.
So I'm still kind of shocked. I really expected you to have like the way you normally spin off your AKA. Yeah, I thought you were going to have like loads of vampire-related shit. I'm a little bit disappointed.
I am
the butcher of Berlin, the terror of Toronto.
Nose fuck you.
Nose fuck you.
Fuck, these teeth are not staying.
Shots.
Essentially, we're talking about vampires, and like, I guess you could say this was, my kind of idea where we're like, hey, are we going to pick a specific film? Or are we just going to like chat essentially about all sorts of different vampire movies? Is my idea is essentially like vampire movies are such a thing that's within our culture. I feel like, and how far they reach back into our like subconscious, like, you know, and I think we should start, I think, from the idea in the beginning of vampires and maybe just to kind of talk about Bram Stoker a little bit and then bring it into modern day vampirism.
So vampirism is obviously pre-Bram Stoker. We're talking like Eastern European and Asian. You know, in Eastern Europe, it was Strigoi, which was pretty much any shape-shifting demon, non-human, you know, like werewolves and all that shit fall into that category. And then out east, you also had the tiny Chinese vampires, which are those hairy little weird flying things that'll just devour you like a bunch of compies from Jurassic Park.
Tiny Chinese vampires kind of sounds like a porno.
Tiny Chinese vampires would be a good band name.
Yes, we are talking about vampires.
Is that a movie that's already been made? For some
reason,
there has to be, right?
Hearing you guys say that makes me think that's definitely a movie.
Tiny Chinese vampires?
Mm-hmm.
I have a fascination with I'm not even going to say it. Never mind.
Blood?
No.
I think he was going to go vampire porn is what he was going to say. But
not even that. No. Just never mind. It is funny.
Chinese vampires on IMDb.
What? Really?
Chinese speaking vampires, Chinese vampires, and then how to survive these 6 types of Chinese vampires.
Yeah. So for everyone that's like tuning in, it essentially, we're debating on what we might call this, but we're gonna be like legitimately talking about every vampire movie that comes to mind. I, in preparation for this, watched probably like, I don't know, 10 vampire movies. Yesterday, I watched The Little Vampire,
Oh God,
a
why?
movie I loved when I was 10 years old.
And how was it watching it now? Later in life.
It's cute, but it's definitely not as good as I remember. But I remember certain scenes where I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that, like the cows turning the vampires, and it's a nice, cute film. I just wanted to watch it because that's like I went and saw in theaters when I was like 10 or 9 or however old I was, and I like Anton. Also really loved vampires. Anton wanted to be a vampire.
Yeah, for the longest time as a lad, I wished that it was true. But that's what happens when you grow up in a crazy religious household. You're like, well, if this is true, then I mean, I could just go find me a fucking,
I've told the
find me a hot
story.
vampire, change me, and then I don't ever feel anything else again.
I've told the story before, but when I was younger, me and my friend were maybe like 9 or 10, and we were pretending to be werewolves. And I was like, look at my canine teeth. I was like, we got werewolf blood in us. And then my cousin was over, and we were like, me and my buddy pretend we were werewolves. And he's like, you guys are fucked in the head. I'm like, yeah, a little bit.
Now that I think back to it, I think I dressed up as Dracula for like probably about 10 years straight every Halloween.
Nice.
Oh yeah, I definitely
with the same costume. So like at one point, I need to actually, I'm going to see if I can find, there's a photograph of me outside of the house, and I have a costume that I got like 4 or 5 years previous, and I look so fucking ridiculous. I'm like some weird like hybrid Michael Jackson Dracula. It's terrible.
It's amazing. I had a pair of fangs, much like Tom has, that I wore pretty much every day of high school. So I was that weird loser.
So here's a question then, and a little bit personal, I suppose. Could you get into that, like, I don't know if there's a name on it, but you know when you see people like, I guess, role play as vampires, but in a more like intimate,
in a kink way? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, as long for me, like there are certain hard limits that I have. Blood is not one of them. I don't mind blood play. I've done it a few times. As long as you're with somebody that is consensual and it's, we all make sure that you've been tested recently, then yeah, I have no problem with it.
Anton's in a bunch of kinky shit. I've said I've said this on the podcast before. I knew this kid and he was super emo. And I was like 13 or 14. He was talking to us, and I was like, "How do you get into this stuff when you're that young? Like, there must be an underlying thing." But he was talking about how he enjoyed like blood play and just kind of cutting himself and rubbing on someone else, or vice versa. And I was always like, "Okay, you know what? Like, people when they're older, you can do whatever you want. I got nothing against what you want to do with inside the confines of your bedroom, as long as it's consensual and nobody gets hurt." But to me, I was like, "This is a weird one." I would say for me.
Yeah, blood plays, it's odd, it's weird. I think it definitely requires a certain level of masochism or sadism, depending on which aspect you are on. But again, it's just if you're between two consenting adults, it doesn't really matter. It's just be smart and be safe about it if you're going to do it.
Yeah, and to me, like I feel like the idea of the whole vampire thing and blood and stuff, it seems like a quite intimate, like sexual thing. But then at the same time, I also have like, I don't know, there's a small part of me, like maybe a fear. Fear of, I don't know, of that, the whole idea of that. Not necessarily, and I didn't even think in a sense of like, making sure everyone's been tested or anything like that. But I don't know, like maybe the idea of seeing my own blood and then being like, oh Jesus, maybe it's a bit too real.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, not saying any names or anything, but when we were all in like our 19, 20, a group of my friends and I, we just a bunch of degenerates hanging out and doing whatever the hell we felt like. But two of them decided they were going to do some blood play in the middle of a park. And when the one person had these little lances on them because they would get boils periodically, and you got to, lance them. So they're medical, they're totally clean. And these two were partnered up. And they decided that they were going to, like I said, they're going to do it in the park. So they made a little cut on the one person's leg, but everyone was a little fucked up and the other person had been drinking, and it had that little cut bled a lot. So they ended up having to go to the hospital. I think they got like 10 or 15 stitches or something like that in their leg. They were fine, but it ruined the entire fucking night. Like me and another person had to grab everybody else in the park and be like, okay, we're going to go. You guys call the ambulance and we're going to fuck off for a bit. Cause it's like, we're not technically a part of it, but we're a part of it and wanted to make sure everybody was safe. But like, that's why you don't do something impromptu like that when you're, like be smart, be sober, be, again, if you're going to do it right. Because if you don't, you can cause some serious fucking problems.
Well, that's what I'm saying too. Like me and Billy, like this is what was this last year? We talked about real life vampires. The idea of like, obviously the bats, in our culture with animals and how they suck blood, like mosquitoes and stuff like that. But we also talked about people that have the fetish of drinking blood and how it can go too far sometimes. Just like the idea of the guy, Army Hammer, that's not his name, but something like that. That cut their one guy was into cannibalism. And
the German cannibal
cut off his dick and shit and ate it
and tried to eat it.
You know about that, right, Aaron?
Yeah.
Every Saturday you're looking that up on Pornhub, right?
Yeah. I actually have it open right now.
The man is prepared.
But like it's this is for your guys' show. We'll see. I would think maybe for all the like Strange Brew fans, we'll just throw it up on YouTube, or maybe you'll have to essentially pay for just having the video on Patreon. We'll discuss it. We'll see what happens. But like I feel like we should start at the beginning of the idea of vampires, and I think where it came from, and then lead up obviously to this to Nosferatu.
Nosferatu is not very far off the origin of vampirism. I think vampire with a Y came before Nosferatu.
Yeah, and then we'll talk about the 70s and how many sexy films they had.
The Hammer films.
Hammer films too, but there was all these films. There's like the lesbian vampires, the vampires of love. It's always like very just like lesbian vampire films for men just to get their rocks off.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I gotta say, I watched Bram Stoker's Dracula. I watched it a couple times when I was a kid and stuff like that, and I don't like it that much. I know some people, I might get some hate and stuff like that, but like the movie kind of like, I remember liking it kind of as a kid, but not gonna lie, it slightly bored me.
Yeah, you're not talking the Gary Oldman one, are you? Right?
Yeah, I'm talking about the Gary Oldman one. I don't know. I rewatched it and watched it in like maybe like 2 or 3 parts.
I thought you said the original. That's not the original.
What's the original?
The original is the Bela Lugosi.
Yeah, I understand that.
Sorry, technically the original is Nosferatu because Dracula didn't come out until 50.
But Bram Stoker's Dracula, how they
Bram Stoker's Dracula, the book.
Stoker, not Stroker. Stoker. And I read the book.
The book is boring as shit.
The book is
the book is mostly about like buying land and like weird shit.
The book was slightly boring. I read most of it, and I saw some of the imagery in. We'll talk about Bram Stoker's Dracula. Like that film is probably the closest to the book, but like essentially what got brought in the forefront was Nosferatu.
Yeah, and if we're going into like weird Vampire the Masquerade lore for our types of vampires, the Nosferatu are the ones that are actually banished from the sun. Everyone else is not. So according to like Vampire the Masquerade, the role-playing game, the Nosferatu are the direct descendants of Cain. Cain being the first vampire because he's the first person to commit murder. It was like, crazy. God cursed you to never see the sun again. You will live in the shadows, which is how we get the Nosferatu. That is just, the beautiful thing about the show Dark Shadows is that it was a soap opera with vampires, and it was very poorly done. Like coffins would fall over, tombstones would fall over in the background. You get boom like shots that would come in. Yeah,
I never watched it.
That was the thing back in the day. It was just like you'd watch it and you're like, they fucked up. That's funny. And then they made the Tim Burton Johnny Depp movie, and it's like, great, this is stupid. Like you're missing you're missing all the cool shit. Yeah, because you like terrible Tim Burton movies.
I love Tim Burton. I actually started Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
Book is way better.
I realized it was a Tim Burton film. I didn't finish it though, but I was like, "This is produced.
Okay. It's not made. It's not a Tim Burton film. It's produced by Tim Burton."
That's why I was like, it didn't feel like a Tim Burton film.
It's because it's not. So, and again, the book is so much fucking better when it comes to Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter because there's so much shit that they left out that was really good. Like for example, the reason, and spoilers for all of our listeners, The reason that one vampire recruits Lincoln is because it's a fucking rule in the book that a vampire cannot kill another vampire because they will die. And I don't mean like Interview with the Vampire style. I mean, they just die. Like if you inflict harm onto another, it's like inflicting harm upon yourself. But in the movie, they just got him running around killing random vampires.
Yeah. When I don't want to like, you guys can carry it the way you guys want to, but I guess we should start with Nosferatu. Like, do you guys remember the first time you watched this?
I'm trying to think back. I think the first time that I ever saw it, it wasn't. I didn't actually see the full thing. I had seen like maybe some clips or maybe even like an image, maybe a poster or something like that. Yeah. And I remember it like freaking me out because I didn't really understand or know too much about it, but just like the sight of his face was like
creepy in the two front fang.
Yeah, that was the thing I think that got me more than anything. What's the? This might seem like a really stupid question considering we're doing an episode about vampires. What's the thinking behind him having the two front fangs?
I was gonna ask.
I think it was supposed to be rat-like. It was just supposed to make him hideous. Plus, the way that it's described in the book is more just a protruding front. I think that just went into more of the old, Romanian and Eastern European lore behind the vampires and their.
Was it bats too? Right? Like, isn't that the idea? Because don't bats have teeth like that?
Yes, kind of? Yeah. Some bats do have that front two, like little hook teeth, and then rats as well. And obviously those two things are tied in with vampirism itself. I think much like you, Aaron, the first time I ever saw Nosferatu was there were a bunch of old videos that we used to watch all the time that were like Smithsonian videos, and it was like animals or this or that or blah blah blah. And I remember one of them because I was always into like venomous animals and like weird, type stuff like that when I was a kid. And one of them had like vampire bats or just bats in general as a video. And then you would see clips and they'd be like, bats have that deeply rooted in vampire lore connection, blah, blah, blah type thing. And there was the image of Nosferatu like creeping up the stairs like this. And for young Anton, it was fucking terrifying. So I think slowly but surely I then started to actually get into it. So it's like I want to say I watched Nosferatu first, then I watched Bram Stoker's Dracula. And the first time I watched Nosferatu, I didn't really take to it. I was like, oh, okay, cool. This is a lot less scary than I expected it to be, blah, blah, blah. But then, going back and rewatching it later, I was like, wow, this is an absolute masterpiece. I get it. Like it's, you just, you watch it nice when it's pitch black out, that special hour of the night, and, just freak yourself out as a kid.
It legitimately creeped me out though when I watched it, and I was like, I remember hearing about it and seeing like obviously the imagery from the film, like when you would see other vampire movies or, and I was super like into vampire stuff. Like my mom and me, like we'd rent like Dracula 2000 and she let me stay up when I was younger to watch these like horror movies. And it's weird that as she grew up, she kind of distanced herself away from horror movies, but she like went and saw Friday the 13th, the original one in theaters. Like she liked horror movies. And then she thought that they got stupid, essentially, with some of the slasher films. We'd always stay up and watch like vampire movies. And I remember the first time, I think I was maybe with a buddy, but when we put on Nosferatu, I think I just probably like was young teenager blazing up, getting stoned. And it was just legitimately creepy of the way it was filmed. And the actor that plays Nosferatu he's fucking creepy looking.
So you've seen it
ominous.
Have either of you seen Shadow of the Vampire?
Yes, we were just talking about that before you came on.
Yeah, so that movie is an absolute masterpiece. Both Dafoe and Malkovich are just absolutely incredible.
That's William Dafoe in the makeup? I just realized that. Yeah. What?
Yeah, John Malkovich plays the director and Willem Dafoe plays Max Schreck. And that was actually like a real legend for the longest time, was because Max Schreck was a character actor and he was very rarely ever seen. So I think they did that thing where, you're like, oh, let's get a little extra publicity about this. And, started spreading the rumor of, oh, he would come out of his room, his trailer at night. He would maybe pick off a crew member here or there.
Shadow of the Vampire is fairly good, too, and it's creepy. And, Aaron, you were talking about it, too, when we first got on.
Yeah, like, I mean, again, for me, I kind of put that in the category with Bram Stoker's Dracula. I could see what you mean about the Gary Oldman one with, it's not maybe as scary or whatever, but I would put Shadow the Vampire in the same kind of category as that. Like the dialogue is fantastic, the story is fantastic, the acting is fantastic, the sets are great, and I think it I think a lot of people when they think of vampire movies, like they just expect, it's going to be like 30 Days of Night where everybody's just ripping each other to shreds, which is, don't get me wrong, which is cool.
Yeah,
but I feel like that's more like your I suppose classic vampire story. That's probably one of my favorite vampire movies is Shadow of the Vampire.
Shadow of the Vampire.
Mm-hmm. I could see that, and I wanted to rewatch it. I didn't get the chance to. But I liked it. I remember watching as a kid. I was like, because I would just like look for obscure movies a lot of times. Or just like, oh, what's a vampire movie I could watch? I might see it like, I don't even think it was on Netflix. I think it was just like one of those late night movies on like IFC or some of those channels that we'd have in Canada. And then so I just like started watching. I was like, this is kind of cool. But as a kid, I didn't appreciate it, I feel like, as much as I could have, considering like I was like, oh, this is not like jumping out scary. But like Bram Stoker's like Dracula, it is good in its own merit. But I feel like it is kind of like when I rewatched it, I was like, it's a little slow. The dialogue's really good, but there's just certain things where it kind of carries on too far in certain scenes. But it's just, I feel like it's trying to keep so close to the book that it doesn't really, I don't know. There's something about it that was like, eh.
The Bram Stoker's Dracula really doesn't even keep that close to the book either. There's a lot that's left out. I mean, when going with the older stuff, like Frankenstein isn't really accurate to the book. Dracula isn't really accurate to the book, because they're both based on the stage play. So somebody wrote a stage play based on the book, and that's what we get. We get a film adaptation of a stage play, which is a very common thing. Also, have you ever seen the Spanish Dracula? It's basically the same thing. It's a little better, but it doesn't have Bela Lugosi.
The Spanish Dracula, so it's called?
No, it's just Dracula, but it's the one that's in Spanish. They
cooks rice and beans or something?
What?
Like it cooks rice and beans?
Listen here, you fucking fang banger.
And like I get it. Like I liked Bram Stoker's more when I was younger, but I rewatched it recently and I was like, I don't know. There's something that I was like, oh, this is kind of slow. I get what it's about. I've seen it and stuff like that. And the woman gets fucked by a werewolf.
You never make it past the woman getting fucked by the werewolf because you just nut and you're like, yeah, I'm done.
Holy shit, man. I fucking had a massive orgasm. And then it's just like, I don't know. There's something just about that film where I'm like, it could have been better. And also Keanu Reeves, as much as I love him, he's very like, oh, I'm Keanu Reeves, man. Like, oh, spook.
That's the joke, is him and Winona Ryder both doing a British accent that just sounds awful. No, Tom froze.
Geek. Everyone froze. No. All right, we're good.
Winona Ryder being like, oh, come to the castle. I'll be here for you, waiting. Keanu Reeves was like, my dearest love, I am coming to save you, Mina.
I think that's what part of the reason I'm like, this is kind of like, I love you, Keanu Reeves, I do, but like, I'm like, yeah.
Look, let's not pretend for 1 second that that's not the Gary Oldman show, okay? Because anything Gary Oldman is in, he is amazing.
Yeah.
Wasn't like there some shit that came out about him like years after that?
Gary Oldman?
Yeah. Him and Winona Ryder had an issue. I'm trying to remember this correctly. Someone on set, I'm not sure if it was the director or somebody who was there that had influence, I think was in his ear and was like, okay, whisper some nasty shit in her ear and get her like worked up.
That's your titty.
Yeah, but apparently he said like super like vulgar shit to her and like they fell out, I think. And she was quoted at the time like saying like, I had an awful time working with him, this and that. And then she came out a couple of years back and she was like, no, I love him. We're friends now. It's all good. Everything's all good.
So she said he was a danger to work with. Now, I'm going to... all right, so hear me out. And this is not defending nor excusing, but it's going to sound like that. So Gary Oldman is a character actor, yes? On a level to which few other people, with the exception of maybe Daniel Day-Lewis, can actually be like, categorized in. So... Is it possible that he was in character the entire time and was like acting as though a predatory vampire would act? Like if he actually physically caused her any harm, that's inexcusable. I don't give a fuck what role you're in.
Yeah.
But if it was just like people fucking with each other on the set of a film, which from my understanding happens a lot. Especially with character work.
I think even the director and a few others who would have been with him at the time had kind of said, yeah, we had meetings with Gary and told him like that's what we wanted.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted him to like, you know, be saying like the most awful, vulgar shit that he could think of in her ear in between takes.
Okay.
To like intensify it. And then I think that's when she came out then and was like, oh, okay, yeah, no, it's all good. Forget about it.
Do you think when he played Sid that he was shooting heroin?
No, but I'm sure he was probably getting as close to it as he possibly could. I'm sure he was probably just drunk as a fucking skunk the entire time he was shooting. So writer said we hung out before the movie and rehearsals and stuff, but it wasn't the same after we started shooting. I don't know why. Maybe it's his way of working, but I felt like there was a danger. So if you're playing somebody who is a physical danger and is obsessed with this one person, it's entirely possible that maybe that's what happened. Again, if he like actually fucking physically assaulted her, that's a different story. But
I feel like Hollywood's a dangerous beast in its own thing, especially when you have people portraying certain roles. Like, to be honest, like my belief, right, for everyone out there, I think Heath Ledger was murdered, but that's just my opinion. But the fact that even if he wasn't, he got like so into that role of the Joker, like it like fucked with his mind. And I'm sure this could happen with other people playing a blood drinking, vicious creature. You know what I mean? Where you just like, you get inside your mind about this character, especially like someone like Gary Oldman, right? Where he's so devoted to acting and being the best he can be. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, and the other thing is too, going back to Gary Oldman, like, look at like The Professional, where he plays an absolute just psychopath in The Professional. So I can't even imagine what he was like on the set of that film.
So like,
he was the least problematic person on the set of that film.
Yeah, I will say Nosferatu, to bring like him to a close, that specific movie was done very well for the time era. I'm sure it freaked the fucking shit out of everyone in that time because, you know, the movies weren't talkies yet. They were just silent films. They were just doing little things like, you know, Lon Chaney was in a lot of movies. Me and Anton want to talk about London After Midnight, right? That's what it's called. We want to eventually
the lost Lon Chaney film that it was only shown like once, and then so like I'm gonna share a little thing on the screen as well.
Yeah. If Aaron, you want to be included with that too, because we want to do it almost for a YouTube maybe thing of like talk about Lon Chaney in that film and and how cursed it is. And so everyone that's listening on audio, subscribe to all the YouTubes because they'll come up.
So this is the other film that came out 10 years after Nosferatu called Vampire.
Looks actually pretty good. Have you played that game anyway? Anyone listening?
Not played the game.
I played the game.
But this had certain stuff like this, like so a lot of the shadow work. It was German, you know, a German film in 32. So I think this was right before all of the you know, the worst shit imaginable started happening in Germany.
But with the guy with the mustache, right? And
the Charlie Chaplin wannabe poser guy. But then you had stuff like this where it was just really, you know, like grabbing scenes for the time where it's like, oh no, here's just someone's face in a coffin.
And for all the audio listeners, right, we're just looking at pictures of this movie Vampire with a
Y. Look it up, not the game.
Yeah, and the Vampire game is not bad either.
Was that based on a book?
Vampire, this film?
Yeah.
It's loosely based off of Dracula as well. The same thing with everything.
Yeah, and when there was a book from like 1819 maybe.
Okay.
By an English novelist, and I think it was spelled like that as well. I was just wondering if was that the specific thing it was based off of?
I think this was actually the original spelling of vampire, and it was only you know, elaborated on a little bit later. So this was actually made during the Nazi occupation of Denmark.
Oh fuck.
Yeah.
I know all about evil creatures, but like I feel like like everyone contributes the idea of vampires to Bram Stoker. Stoker. Is that, you know, that's where people contribute a lot of this idea. But if you do look back in history, there's a lot of like weird folklore or things within other cultures that have to do with some sort of creature that drinks blood. You know what I mean? Like even some weird cryptids that existed, I'd be like in the, you know, the 1700s. Look at where like, you know, even the 1600s, they got witches. People have been burning witches on the stake, right?
Well, the witches and the vampire thing were just very closely related to each other because of the, you know, the early satanic panic type shit that the fucking Romans and everybody spread when they.
Yeah, and I'm sure people believed in weird shit even back in the day.
Well, it's always been a thing. Like, look at Romulus and Remus in was it Rome or Greek? It was Greek. Romulus and Remus, the two that were the founders of the city, were raised by a wolf.
Yeah, like stuff like that, and like stuff within even Viking culture of like Beowulf.
Well, the Berserker. No, Beowulf is way it's older than that. But yeah, and then you had like, you know, like Gilgamesh and stuff. We're going back to like Mesopotamia, and you had the half human, half god creatures, or the half human, half animal creatures. It's always been there, and I think that in a lot of ways, it's just how we attempted to explain how some people are just monsters.
Yeah,
and especially if you live in a warring culture, then you're more likely to get to the top of that culture if you are a monster. So I think it was a lot of just people coping with stuff, you know?
Yeah. No, I agree.
You had said there a few minutes ago, Tom, about you look for more obscure vampire movies and stuff to watch, so you didn't get a chance to watch Shadow the Vampire again.
Yeah, well, I wanted to watch the main, like ones that we know. Like, we'll eventually talk about some of the films I got into. But even when I sent Aaron all the stuff, I was like, I'm like full on watching like everything that I can pull up that's more or less free or I can find.
Did you watch Another Beast Incorporated like I told you to?
No, I did not.
So on my travels, looking back at some vampire stuff to see could I find things that I hadn't heard about or didn't see. I came across a movie that was made in 1967. It's a Filipino movie.
That's where a lot of child trafficking happens.
Cool.
Unrelated to the story, Tom.
Great. It's called Batman Fights Dracula.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I have to read out this plot because it's
a comic book, right? Not a movie.
No. It's a movie. Tom needs to take those fangs out.
Yeah, he does.
Because he keeps freezing.
That's all right. We don't need him. Keep going.
So the movie features a mad scientist named Dr. Zorba, who, after being constantly defeated by Batman, finds a way to resurrect Count Dracula and control him and make him even stronger.
That's sick, though.
Dracula sneaks into the Batcave and attacks Batman, who tries to use a cross and holy water against him.
Oh my god, it's a real movie.
Dracula throws Batman against the wall and knocks him out and flees the scene. Batman is then found by his butler, Turco, who calls for Batman's girlfriend and sidekick to aid in tracking down his attacker. After tracking down Dracula, Reuben, who was based on Robin, and
Reuben
and Maurice
Reuben
managed to kill the Doctor by turning Dracula against him. The vampire is then investigated by a recovering Batman within a cage in the Batcave. The movie ends with a scene with Batman lecturing Dracula about justice.
Everyone that's listening on audio, look this up, and it is fucking strange. Like, and to me, like, I feel like they couldn't get the copyright of the actual Batman character.
Dude, it was the Philippines. There are no copyright laws there. What are you talking about? They did not.
Okay, go to the main poster, Anton, and like full screen it, like on. It's fucking weird. And what is on his chest? Just like a fucking.
It's a man dancing, I think. Is what it is.
It's fucking so weird.
There's a really good YouTube video where a guy like breaks down as much as he possibly could find about it, and like it's so fucking bizarre. They did
Spider-Man movies too, like this, where it was just like, oh, we're just taking the IP and doing whatever the fuck we want with it.
There's actually not to go too off topic. There was one when I first started going to the States when I was like super young and we were still in like, you know, videotape time.
Mm-hmm.
I remember getting two really shitty Spider-Man movies that I thought at the time, I got them in Chinatown in New York. At the time, I thought they were like some like shitty like bootleg thing.
Yeah.
Little did I come to realize only a few years ago that these are movies that like lots of other people know about. Spider-Man and the something dragon. He was like in Tokyo or somewhere, and it's like the most ridiculous shit
Is it Spider-Man just beating up Yakuza the whole time, or?
Yeah, and it doesn't really make any sense. He's just like there's a scene where he's hanging from a rope on a helicopter, and they just fly him all over the city with him just, and it's like a 15-minute thing of him just hanging like this. There's another scene where he's like driving this weird looking like Japanese style boat down. Yeah, it's so random. Okay. But I remember at the time being like, oh, this is some weird bootleg. And I seen a thread on Reddit a while ago, and it was like thousands of people like, yeah, I love this film. This is like huge cult following.
Oh my God.
That's not like a surprise how many movies, right, get these cult followings where people are like, you know, they don't do well at the time. You can even say movies like Kevin Smith and stuff like that, where it's just like people just enjoy it for what it is. And then later on, it's just like, oh shit. Cause like for me, the fact that like certain cultures and stuff like that take like movies like Batman and, you know, they're like, all right, let's put him against Dracula. And then it's just like DC Comics is like, whatever, I'm not fucking disputing this bullshit. Like they can have it if they want it. Like it's like let them have their poor shitty fucking directed movies.
So you ever seen any of the like the El Santo films where it's just a luchador fighting vampires? It was later on they used that as an inspiration for the Silver Angel, I want to say was his character's name in The Strain.
Oh, I've never seen The Strain either.
Read it. Don't fucking watch it. The book is, again, infinitely better.
Mm-hmm. I gotta take out these hierarchies. They're fucking annoying.
Holy shit, it's about time. Good, now's our chance. We can kill them.
Yep. So, I want to say, okay, so we've talked about Nosferatu. I fairly think that imagery in that movie is fairly creepy.
So while we're still on Nosferatu, not to go in chronological order, but let's just stay on that topic for a few seconds to close that out. The Klaus Kinski Nosferatu, the 74.
Oh yeah, and I've never seen that. I looked for it to see if I could get it free and didn't have to like really buy it. For sure.
Yes.
Oh, I'm gonna watch that. See,
you can watch it with Joe Bob on Shudder if you want.
Yeah, even I told Chelsea I was like, I'm gonna stop watching vampire movies, and then last night I was like, do you want to watch The Shed, which is like a Shudder movie about a vampire in a shed? And I'm still after this episode, I will still probably keep watching vampire movies and get it out of my system because there's certain ones I haven't seen that I would like to watch. And I've been addicted to watching the Hammer films. And that was really cool. And that's what made me think about doing this is I watched The Brides of Dracula outside on my projector screen.
Dracula and his satanic brides?
Yeah, on like 3 grams of mushrooms. And I was like, it was such a cool film to watch outside while being on mushrooms because I was like, the costumes are very vibrant and you analyze that time era where it's the 60s, but everything is like practical effects. You know, everyone's got like these like cool ass like costumes you would see in a play. And it was like well done. And I like the Hammer films. Cheaply done, but well done.
They were not cheaply done. I mean, they were done on BBC Studios, so it wasn't as though it had the same production value as a Hollywood film. Yeah. But the cheapest aspect is that right there. That fucking paint red blood that just looks not even close.
Well, and I watched the whole doc about Hammer films.
Well, the strength of those films is like Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing and everybody. And actually, I have most of the Hammer films on DVD as well as 2 really big art books with all Hammer film art in it as well. But those were iconic in their own way.
And I'm going to lead up to those films.
Like a bit of them. You had flagrantly satanic imagery where they had the sigil of Baphomet everywhere. They're performing mock-up Anton LaVey style inspired black masses. And it was meant to just be sexy. Like that was the whole point, is it was just
for sure.
Sex and violence, it's gonna sell, we're gonna get these out there. And somehow they didn't end up on the video nasties, which is weird.
They produced them fairly fast. I will get more into the Hammer films in a bit. But Nosferatu, I think, was a fairly creepy film. I think it would brings in the subconscious of our culture of like the idea of this creepy blood drinking vampire that's usually after a woman in most cases. So,
Aaron, what are your thoughts on the Werner Herzog Nosferatu? Seeing as how somebody didn't do their homework and they can't comment on it.
I'm completely sidetracking here because I couldn't stop thinking about it as soon as you mentioned Klaus Kinski. Mm-hmm. I don't know if either of you guys know who William Malone is.
Post Malone's brother?
No. He directed the House on Haunted Hill remake.
Oh, I love that.
Oh,
movie.
that film's fun.
Yeah. I had him on the podcast maybe about a year ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
He had worked with Kinski a couple of times, and he told a story actually on the podcast. He said that they went for lunch one day before, like it was like a pre-production meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And they all sit down, and he arrives in like 20, 30 minutes late with a girl who he was like, I have no idea how he didn't get arrested. He was like, this girl couldn't have been older than 15. And he sits down at the table, and they're all like, whatever, having lunch, talking about whatever. And he starts to like tell all these little stories. And he was like, the first sentence that came out of his mouth was, oh yeah, I raped my daughter. I have no idea. I haven't been caught yet.
What? The guy that created this film, and I've always seen this
not
film.
the guy that created it, the actor. Pipe down.
The actor.
And everybody just like, and then kind of laughed and was like, oh, okay. And apparently he would do that shit like all the time. He was like notorious for like weird.
So was he doing it to like get a rise out of somebody, or was he
like that's what he was kind of alluding to?
Full screen that, Anton.
It got to the point where nobody really knew whether the stuff was true or not, and maybe it ties into like what you were saying about Gary Oldman and stuff. I don't know if he got that into roles or trying to like stir people up that he would like enjoy doing. I mean,
yeah, from everything I've heard, Klaus Kinski is an asshole. I mean, even Herzog. What was it that Herzog said where he's like, I named every gray hair on my head Klaus, or something like that. Like he just fucks with people constantly. But I mean, if you like, I don't know, man. That's the whole thing of the the illusion. These are all real mummified people, by the way, Tom. Those were not props. It was very much like the Poltergeist thing where they just filmed. Because I believe
for the audio listeners who are watching the trailer.
But yeah, is it him just trying to push the envelope as far as he can possibly go, or I mean, I don't know. What was the whole thing with God? Why am I blanking on the director of The Professional right now? It's not Godard, is it? It's anyways. Didn't he get popped for something like that as well? Where like everyone always says that there's that weird pedophilic aspect to lay on The Professional, and like they're like, maybe not, but then the director got popped like grooming a 15-year-old or something.
Do you know, right? And I often wonder this, and I definitely think it is what you're saying, where he was probably trying to rise people and like fuck with people or whatever. And like a lot of the stories of Kinski are people saying he was a dickhead and he was this and he was that.
Yeah.
It just seems like such a fucking weird thing. Like out of all the things you could do or say to like fuck with people or get a rise out of people, like saying shit like I raped my own daughter or like hanging out with chicks that look like they're 15.
Yeah.
It's a really odd like way to go about it.
Yeah, it would take a special kind of scumbag to fucking be like, this is funny. People are going to laugh at this. It's like, no, you're just going to make everyone horribly uncomfortable and concerned for the safety of another human being.
Or it's true.
He made a yeah. Well, this is
or it's true. Yeah.
He had written a movie, and I think it came out in around the early 80s called Creature. And when the studio that ended up producing it bought it from him, they had a meeting and they told him that you need to write in a part because we want him in the movie. So you need to just make it work.
And I've always
blown away by that. He was like, why are we even like, he was like, I'm surprised this dude is not in prison. Why are we going out of our way to
look at people like Roman Polanski and shit?
Yeah.
Like open, like, and then he ran away.
Polanski fled the area where he could actually be held legally accountable. That's why Polanski will not set foot in the United States again.
No. And this like idea, right? Like the only reason I didn't watch this film, and I've seen it since I was a kid, like always like, oh, like I like the Nosferatu film, so I should watch this one. And you know why I didn't watch it, Anton? Is because I didn't feel like reading subtitles. That's literally it. And it looks creepy. Like he looks like, and I've seen this since I was a teenager.
I would say this is arguably better.
Really?
And creepier. Yeah, I would say the 79 Nosferatu is creepier and better than the OG, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I'll
have to give it a try.
Gross. It's just it takes everything that Nosferatu does and it kicks it up about 10.
Yeah. And I guess we can bring it into like, to me, and I feel like this is what most people associate vampires movies with, is Bela Lugosi. The idea of Dracula, at least, he to me is, and I still, as I'm watching the Hammer films, I like Christopher Lee as Dracula, but to me, I feel like because of what I grew up with and my grandfather showing me films like Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein and the original Dracula movie, I watched that outside, and I'll just say that my fiance was very bored because the original Dracula is very slow, and you can tell it kind of keeps to somewhat of Bram Stoker's book, because you can see like, and I'm starting to realize, I'm like, oh shit, there's like the vampire hunter, what's his name? And I'm starting to realize, because I haven't seen it. Yeah, there's Van Helsing in it, and I didn't realize when I watched it originally that like they actually had all this stuff with inside the film.
So Van Helsing isn't even a vampire hunter. So that's something that we have ascribed to Van Helsing later on in the story. Van Helsing was a doctor at the time, Dr. Abraham Van Helsing, who was also very deeply steeped in the vampire folklore. So have either of you seen Dracula's Daughter?
I feel like when I was younger, yeah. That's like what, the second or third one or something like that.
It takes place immediately after the events of the first. I feel like
Dracula. I watched a lot of Bela Lugosi films when I was younger.
So a lot of it, like it starts with Van Helsing being arrested for the murder of Dracula.
Oh shit! And they what? They arrested him for? I thought they thought he was a monster.
No one else. It wasn't Frankenstein. It wasn't a whole group of people going up with fucking, pitchforks and torches to try and storm the castle. It was Van Helsing going in with a group of 2 other people. So he's basically like, look, I killed him. He's a fucking blah, blah, blah. He's a vampire, this and that. So they go and they do the trial. But Dracula's Daughter all follows this woman who's just trying desperately to not be a vampire. And so much of it is an allegory for, being gay. Like a lot of it is a very heavy-handed queer aspect of she's clearly she's lesbian coded. Yeah. And like the whole thing is her just trying to be like, no, I'm not gonna. And then at the end, she's like, you know what? Fuck it. Fuck all of you. I'm killing everyone.
A lot of vampire movies are very, let's be honest,
Jesus Christ. No, a lot of vampire films are queer because they deal with the story of the other.
Or
the person who is outside of.
Aaron, do you remember the first? I know. Why? Do you remember the first time you saw? Because to me, I'll say to me, my Dracula is Bela Lugosi. I can't help it because the first incarnation I saw of Dracula.
I thought you were great as Mr. Karloff's sidekick.
I think the first time, and this is a really I think kind of a unique or a random way to see it. The first time that I was ever I suppose exposed to the Universal monsters and stuff, I went to Universal Studios Florida when it was called that, in the mid to late 90s. So I was super young at the time, and I done the horror makeup show there. And they have this whole, they actually still to this day have the exact same, they've cut in fucking Tom Cruise's Mummy movie and shit like that into it.
They're trying to do the Dark Universe or whatever that was called.
Yeah, but they have a video package they show at one point in the show, and it talks about Bela Lugosi and all the different Universal monsters and the history of Universal. And I think that was where I first seen anything to do with that. They show.
How old were you?
7.
Okay, so it's young. Your first.
Yeah, I wasn't afraid or anything, but I remember being for a long time never really having an interest in actually seeing the movies. I think that's where I became fascinated with the idea of behind the scenes and how these things actually got made.
Yeah, for sure.
And the idea of some of these actors going to the point where they would nearly kill themselves for a role.
Mm-hmm.
Christian Bale's rapid, weight gain and loss for every role that he's in.
So yeah, I think that's the first time that I ever even seen him or heard.
To me, that was Dracula because my grandfather hated slasher films and the movies I was super interested by, right? Where the ones I really got my goat and was you're not allowed to watch this because you're too young type of shit. Where he would show me movies like House on Haunted Hill, the OG one, with Vincent Price and stuff like that. But always it was those black and white, make you think type of horror movies. And to me, it was always like, you know, I loved Frankenstein as a kid. And to talk about, like, Anton also should talk about his in Aaron, I want to hear if you're interested in vampires and if it, you know, when you really got into the idea of vampires. Because when I was a kid, I loved horror and strange stuff and everything. And I started by doing, like, I would watch, you know, Frankenstein and Dracula movies, Bela Lugosi movies. And I would draw. I used to like draw all the time. And me and Aaron talked about wanting to create. I used to want to create my own horror movies when I was a kid. I've told Anton that, where I have pictures of like this guy, this vampire standing in like a field after I watched some sort of vampire movie, and he's got a sword, he's got blood dripping down his fangs, and like there's just like body parts everywhere where they're like square with like a little fucking rounded foot, and it looks like there's these cut body parts everywhere. But I used to draw tons of stuff like that of like, I always, and my mom can attest to this too, is like either Frankenstein, or I used to always draw like Dracula, like eating somebody, or like, you know, a guy like, oh, I'm Dracula with a sword cutting down people. I wonder what movie that was that really made me, and I can specifically remember the drawing in my head of like just this guy staying with a sword and this litter of human bodies everywhere. And I'm like maybe 9 when I drew that, or 8. I'm like, I was a little nuts.
So for me, it was, like some of the earlier horror movies that I ever got into were the Universal ones. Yes. Because as I said before, I was terrified of horror movies back in the day, to the point where walking past, you know, covers in the movie store used to give me nightmares. And like I know we've talked about this before, but as an adult now, I kind of chase that like it's a high, where I'm like, if something can give me that feeling, I'm like, wow, that was a very well done horror movie. But a lot of it for me, I was a gigantic fucking Buffy fan when I was a kid. It's one of the only good memories I have with my biological mother was watching Buffy. That's Barbara Streisand and What's Up, Doc. This is not Buffy, Tom. Pull that down. This is later. That's Kronos. That's a movie we'll talk about in a little bit. And God damn it, you son of a bitch, derailed my fucking train of thought.
You were scared of movies posters.
No, we passed that. So no, I was a huge Buffy fan. So that led into it. And then, you know, the Universal monster movies were the kind of dip my toe into things. And one of my favorite things to watch when I was a teenager was this show called Offbeat Cinema, which their tagline is, "We show the good, the bad, and the foreign." So it's very similar in the same vein as like Svengoolie or Elvira or Joe Bob, where it's, you know, horror movies or miscellaneous older public domain movies. The way that I know neither of you guys have the horror movie host thing like we do here in the States, but it was basically a way for certain stations to occupy dead air time, where it was like, oh, you work for the studio, we have 3 hours between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. where nothing is happening on a Sunday, so we're going to give you that time slot. What do you got for us? And the tried, tested, and true method was to become a horror host. So we had Offbeat Cinema. They would show like the Hammer films constantly, and a bunch of other really weird stuff like Jesse James Meets Frankenstein's Daughter, shit like that. And that was really where I would say my love for, that is actually a pretty great image. My love for old school horror like that was cemented. That and just going to the video store every single weekend and renting new stuff.
For anyone who is curious about that, I think that there is episodes of that on YouTube at the minute for free. I remember discovering that in New York because I think that was on reruns till probably about 10 years ago.
Offbeat Cinema?
Yeah.
It's from really? My hometown. Everyone there is from Buffalo. I've actually met most of them. And the one was filmed live at a coffee house that I've been to a billion fucking times. But so the one guy got fired, the guy that played not Bird, but Maxwell. Maxwell got fired because he said some very racially insensitive shit during the Baltimore riots. And they're like, yeah, we don't want you on this show anymore. But Zelda and Bird are still on there. And the problem is that it's so sporadic. Like it used to be 2 a.m. on. That was when it was on Saturdays. And then it was like gone for a little while. And then it came on Sundays. And then there was gone again. And now apparently it's back. So it's but no, now knowing that they're on YouTube, I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch them because I have a best of DVD, but it's just clips. And I've seen it a million times.
Yeah, there is. I've definitely seen that on YouTube. I'm gonna try and pull it up as we're talking here so I can confirm that for people.
I don't know the Offbeat Cinema. I'll have to check that out.
Tom knows Beat Off Cinema.
Yes, for sure. It's on my fucking bookmarks. But like to me, I feel like and a lot of people will be the same with this, is that a lot of people's introduction to Dracula was Bela Lugosi. Like it was because that's the Universal monster movies. When they first started to bring, I guess you could say, horror to the forefront, was mostly Universal Studios producing these films based on books. And then, they realized how much attention it grabbed and how much people enjoyed it. So they kept pumping them out like crazy. There will never, ever be a lacking of vampire movies. There is fucking so many that even in your entire lifetime, it would be hard to watch all of them.
You know I mean? Yeah, to try to find them all from all different aspects of, like each different country, each different culture having their vampire films. And then we go into what we define as vampires, Like, are we talking things that explode in the sunlight? Or have to be killed with a stake or decapitation? Because then you have the whole vampire lore that goes into that too, where it's like, if you're going into the elder vampire territory, staking them ain't going to do shit. Cutting their head off probably won't even do shit. You have to stake, cut the head off, then incinerate the body with sunlight. And then salt the earth that you bury them in.
Well, we kind of mentioned it, but I feel like now that we've, gone past Bela Lugosi essentially, and in that, I feel like he did the iconic, I want to suck your blood, like that whole, that.
No vampire has ever said that.
No?
The original ones, no. That was never a line that was uttered in a vampire movie. That's the line. I never drink wine. But he's never come straight out and been like, I want to suck your blood.
No, but I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that accent, that Transylvanian, Romanian accent is, I feel like that's where it becomes iconic, because now it's the talkies, right? You don't hear Nosferatu speak. So when Bela Lugosi gets brought into the forefront of being like Dracula, you get that accent and the creepy, my grandfather used to do that too, where he'd fucking put his coat beyond his eyes and hide his eyes.
Ed Wood, though. So that's because Lugosi was Hungarian and could not speak with an American accent, nor should he have.
Yeah. And then to me, and I was watching the Hammer documentary with me and Aaron, juggled around maybe doing that for an episode one day, but I watched I think I finished all of it, a 2-hour doc that was on actually Tubi. And for people, Tubi is free, and they do have some obscure horror movies. I started watching Vampire Circus, which is another Hammer film. But so I've been watching, I watched the original Hammer Dracula. I've been watching Scars of Dracula. I watched Dracula Has Risen from His Grave. I think that's what it's called.
Have you ever seen Fearless Vampire Killers?
No, I'll have to check that out. But I even so Christopher Lee, when he started becoming Dracula, and this is for people, Christopher Lee's in fucking Lord of the Rings and became a very iconic actor in a lot of other movies, but he played Dracula in so many movies to do with vampires, and he had to wear these bloodshot-eyed contacts, and they said that he couldn't see shit. Couldn't see anything.
Christopher Lee is his own episode in and of itself, because that man had an absolutely fascinating life. That man was a Nazi hunter. He put out a metal album when he was in his 90s.
Really?
Dude, deep dive Christopher Lee sometime. I'm not even gonna take the time to waste the time to start and even attempt to poorly explain it here. But that man lived a fucking life. One of my favorite stories ever is when they were filming. This is unrelated but slightly related. When they were filming the Lord of the Rings films, and Saruman gets stabbed. He Peter Jackson was like, "Hey, I want you to scream when you get stabbed. In the scene." And he just looks at him and he goes, "Have you any idea the noise a man makes when he's stabbed in the back suddenly?" No, it's like, I do. You don't scream. Your lungs don't have the air. He's like, okay, roll it. Let's go, people.
That's and okay, I'm sure you guys obviously have seen them before I did, but I just recently got into the Hammer films because I found it There's a play in the Canada. We have a thing called Sunrise Records, right? Mm-hmm. They sell records and CDs and movies, and they've kind of kept that alive a little bit. So I saw that it was on sale, and I wanted to look for DVDs that I could watch outside on my projector. And then so I got the Hammer films. I was like, I feel like I've heard of this, and I started watching them. And at least where their documentary was talking about, is essentially they were cheaply done, but they pumped them out so fast. And this was the revival of the monster movie. They tried to, and at the beginning they couldn't actually have the rights to the Universal Studio monsters. They had to kind of riff on it, and then eventually Universal Studios gave them the ability to do it their own way. And I want to know like your guys' thoughts and Aaron's thoughts, Anton, your thoughts of like, when did you guys start getting into the Hammer films? Because that was the 60s, and when they were trying to revive all this stuff with to do with vampires and that sort of movie lore.
Yeah, well, I feel like especially over here would have been a UK thing. It was always just kind of around. Like I always remember Hammer horror being a thing, but never really. It was weird because it was like it was in the zeitgeist, but like nobody really. I didn't really dabble in it. Like it wasn't like you weren't super exposed to things like you would be now today in like the age of social media and stuff like that, where if something gets popular or something's out there, you can't escape it. But it was always something that I had heard about. But again, it would have been, at least over here at the time, late night TV, and I would like every now and again see never a full movie, like bits and pieces of movies. And I've actually yet to, there's a lot of them that I've yet to actually sit down and watch the entire thing the whole way through.
That's what I'm trying to do now.
Yeah, and like I always have these glimpses, or somebody mentions something, I'm like, oh yeah, I seen that, and then like I go back and watch the full movie, and I'm like, wait, I don't remember any of this. And I might have just seen like one scene and then been like caught or told like, no, go to bed, or you shouldn't be up. And then I remember at one point it was a UK channel, but it used to be quite popular in Ireland, called S4C. And from like midnight, they would show a combination of WWF Attitude and just like ridiculous movies, and a lot of them were like Hammer horror films and stuff like that. And I remember like getting videotapes and trying to like time it, so I would like record it and then stop in between all the commercials and then record again.
That's pretty sweet.
A lot of the movies I still to this day haven't seen the full way through.
Yeah, and they're good. Like, even when I was watching the doc about them, I'm saying that essentially the acting was really well done because of who they chose, and that they were more low budget, you could say, but they had a lot of like good, like very well done costumes, and it feels like one of those, I don't know, it's almost like a play because of how it's structured. And that's where the 60s brought in, and I feel like that's when people really started getting into vampires, and as it led into all these movies within the 70s, 80s, because Hammer was fucking pumping them out, man. Pumping them out.
Yeah. Like there's a really good there's a good Hammer book out there that had a quote from Scorsese on the front of it, and it was like, the moment I saw the logo, I knew I was in for a fucking ordeal. So there's some that are really out there. There's like the one where Dracula's blood is a powder, and in order to bring him back, they basically just do lines of Dracula's blood.
What? Really?
Yeah. And then there's like Dracula 79 AD, where like they bring him back and he's like driving a muscle car and shit.
So for me, for that.
I got into the Hammer films, or I guess at around the time of like Offbeat Cinema, because a lot of the stuff that I discovered for the more obscure shit was because of shit like Offbeat Cinema, because of shit like Joe Bob, because of shit like how am I blanking right now? Okay, brain's glitching out. Mystery Science Theater, there it is. So all the weird obscure stuff, and then I'd be like, oh, I actually want to see this movie, or I want to see this one. And for the Hammer stuff, it hit around the right time because all of the ultra satanic imagery just hit me at the spot where I was like getting really into Satan as a teenager, you know? Like I was super into LaVey and like all the whole weird, dark, you know, the adversary aspect of Satanism, not the weird poser like, let's go sacrifice animals, but being like, I fucking hate the church. I hate all the bullshit that I have to deal with fucking religion. So Satan, man, you know? And, I will agree that, yes, well, a lot of them are very corny and very cheesy. The imagery really, really pulled me in. I thought it was really cool. Plus, it was different from what we got as vampires. So like, it wasn't quite the John Carpenter's vampires where that was just sexy and dark, and it wasn't Underworld where it was sexy and dark, and it wasn't Blade and the same thing, you know, like an Interview with the Vampire. I mean, for me, obviously, Interview with the Vampire kind of hit for several different reasons, but
do you want to talk about that now? The gayest vampire movie ever to exist?
I don't think that's the gayest vampire movie to ever exist.
Gayest vampire movie to exist.
Tom Cruise being in it makes it pretty gay. Yes,
yeah, because do you think that he's legitimately gay, everybody? I do. I think
don't know. I think Tom Cruise is a shell of a human being. I don't think he actually experiences sexuality the way most people do. I don't think Tom Cruise is a person.
I think he's a reptilian, bro. Scientology is its own beast and its own thing, but the thing is,
oh god, it's gonna become incoherent.
Yeah, I'm gonna fucking smoke a bowl soon. But that Interview with the Vampire, I actually liked. To me, because I watched all these different. I watched a lot of the Hammer films. I watched Bram Stoker's Dracula. I watched Prince of Darkness, the Hammer film. I watched tons of stuff. I'm getting into What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah, but which one's Prince of Darkness?
That's like the one, they try to revive it, and Prince of Darkness came out like, I don't know, 5 or 6, 7 years after they started creating these vampire Hammer films.
The only one I know of is the John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness, which has nothing to do with vampires.
No, this one was Christopher Lee. It's like the main Dracula story as a film, and they did it a couple years after they revived it. And I actually enjoyed and remember as a kid enjoying Interview with the Vampire because it is a strange film, and it does, and as me and Billy kind of talked about on the Vampires of Ontario episode, is that it kind of really does make you think of like what it would be like to be a vampire, and how Brad Pitt's character like he drinks the blood of rats so he doesn't have to consume humans. And then you have the idea, you know, and it's, I don't know if mushrooms is making me see everything in a weird way, but that like this idea of Kirsten Dunst being an 11-year-old child that gets turned into a vampire, and then she's maturing and having these very mature thoughts. And you can obviously see that she wants something to do with Brad Pitt. There's a little bit of chemistry there. And it was one of Kirsten Dunst's first kiss on a film. And she was uncomfortable because she saw Brad Pitt as like a brother. So it was the first time she ever kissed somebody, and it was Brad Pitt, this older man. She saw him it was a creepy kind of thing. But this idea of like a child turning into a vampire is fucking strange. You know what I mean? That the fact that you have these mature thoughts, but you're not able to, like you're in a child's body. You know what I mean?
That could be an analogy for abuse as well, because anyone that suffers abuse at a childlike age, or at that early of an age, it's going to cause your brain to start doing things. You know what I mean? Like you're going to take on a certain, and I don't want to use the word maturity because that word sounds too positive when talking about trauma at that age, but a sort of adult awareness of the world. So let's not say maturity because it's not that, but it's a very like, oh, okay, I guess childhood's over, so I gotta deal with all this shit now. Because
she goes through things in years, right? Where like I would like to hear like even Aaron's point on this stuff too, because it is a weird. They chose it's an interesting style of film when it comes to vampires, because it does make you question things, and the fact that she is so young is such a weird thing, and that she has these urges to kill essentially as a child, and then you're walking around, so in your mind you feel like you're 30-40 years old as you go through all these years with Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise's characters. You'll probably know their names, Anton, better than me, and then you know what I mean. In the ending where how Kirsten Dunst dies legitimately like made me feel really bad when I watched the movie. I felt horrible about it.
But yeah, she's supposed to die. Like, you know what's crazy is that in all technicality, Louis should have also been put to death in that same chamber, because Louis, I can't remember Kirsten Dunst's character's name, but Louis and her are the ones that killed Lestat. And the reason that Armand doesn't throw Louis in there is because Armand wants to fuck Louis.
Yeah.
No, that's literally the reason, is he wants him as his partner at that point.
But that's what Tom Cruise did. I feel like to Brad Pitt, even when he comes back into the room.
That's Lestat and Louis' whole fucking story arc together.
He's like, you're still as beautiful as I remember you. It's just like shit like that.
Which at the time was huge. I mean, it was Anne Rice just making outright queer characters. He didn't come directly out and say it, but I mean, I feel like it was more than subtext. Is that
Uncle Ben's cousin?
What?
Anne Rice.
Oh my fucking god, Tom.
All right, Aaron, get in this fucking combo. What do you think? What did you think?
Please, for the love of God, put an end to Tom.
I was thinking of something there, and I just completely lost it trying to like, decipher what you just said.
Oh, I love you, buddy. Holy shit.
Yeah, I don't know. Interview with a Vampire for me has always been a really weird one.
I like it in a weird way, though.
Yeah,
it's weird.
And I remember liking it years ago, and then I kind of moved away from it. And I think probably much like Keanu Reeves in Bram Stoker's Dracula, a lot of people seem to hang on the fact that, like, how terrible he was in that or whatever.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is the same. Like, Tom Cruise gets a lot of shit, and I don't know what it's like over with you guys, but this is one of the movies I remember over here kind of getting a bad rap because a lot of people don't like Tom Cruise. And I think I kind of turned away from it based on that. And only in the last couple of years, I went back and actually rewatched it again. And yeah, it's kind of a hard movie to explain in a way. And I had seen some people even go, "Oh, I don't really feel like it's an outright vampire movie. It's something else,
like a love story, but it's not. Yeah, it's not
with vampires." Which I kind of enjoy, but I think for anybody who hasn't seen it before, I would try to go into it with as much of an open mind as possible.
I remember seeing it as a kid too, and it weirded me out because I saw it pretty young.
Yeah.
So we're still in the romantic era of vampires in these films that we're talking about, where it is that pageantry and aristocratic. That's a sexualized vampire. That's not a romantic era vampire, but okay.
Romance comes from sexual attraction, bro.
No, it doesn't. Anyways, we're in the whole pageantry stuff like that, the deep embrace, etc. We're not talking strictly sex. We're talking like heavily romanticized stuff, heavy costuming, aristocratic type stuff, and that tragic story almost, where it's like it's a very sympathetic character.
The movie's sad in the way some of the characters turn out.
Yes. So while we're on still in the romantic era, before we move into the 30 Days of Nights style, where we just go into the straight animalistic fucking rip your face off.
I was gonna watch it. I did it.
Kronos. Have either of you seen Kronos?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. No, I've never even heard of it. Like, I've never had anyone even mention this film to me.
You know why? Because you refuse to watch fucking films with subtitles like a child.
You're kind of right, though.
I know. So anyways, here's a trailer.
Can they not have dubbed over versions and I'll watch it that way? That even bothers me.
Here's a trailer. This is a Guillermo del Toro film.
I like Guillermo del Toro, so... Oh, it's on Apple Films? Oh, that's fucking that gold movie. I'm gonna have to edit down some of this audio, or I'll make you guys do it. I'll just send you it raw. Like, fucking edit out all this bullshit.
Oh no, mister, you're the one fucking yakking every 5 seconds. You're editing it. Anyways, check it out.
Boldly original. So for the audio listeners who are watching the trailer, I will cut this down, so don't you worry. Shit, man, that's my grandfather, man. Probably should have played the audio of this. He looks like that guy from Scary Movie that plays the president.
Leslie Nielsen.
Yeah.
So Kronos is a different style of a vampire film.
It looks good.
It requires a mechanical catalyst. So there's that little gold device thing, which essentially has a well, spoiler alert, it essentially has like a bug inside of it that will imbue everybody that gets poked by it with the bloodlust that causes you to be immortal. It really just goes into like showing like the aspect between the grandfather and his granddaughter, and how his body is just starting to break down and decay, and she's having to deal with all of that. Ron Perlman is basically the antagonist in the film, trying to get that device, and it's
I've never even heard of it at all.
Not.
Oh, I actually can't believe that.
It's just no. I've like know a lot of like horror like films. I watch a lot of docs and stuff like that where they talk in depth about different style horror movies, and I've never even heard of it. That's strange. I would
watch Del Toro, man. Like if you haven't seen like Devil's Backbone is phenomenal. And it's not most of them are dubbed, aren't they? You can
Devil's Backbone. Is that a gay porno?
Oh God.
Anyways, Aaron, your thoughts on Chronos? You said you've seen it.
Yeah. That, again, it's a movie that I remember telling people about, and kind of got a similar thing. I always found a lot of people were like, "What? Never heard of it." And also and it was probably done on purpose, but even to look at it now, from the outside looking in, I don't think you would still put together that it's a vampire movie.
Right.
I don't know do you know, was that like a conscious decision not to really, because it didn't seem to push that. Like I've watched some behind the scenes stuff, I've watched Del Toro talk about the movie, TV spots and stuff, and it doesn't really push the whole vampire thing.
Right. I think it was meant to be more of because how like Del Toro shit's always riddled with subtext. It's much more about like the underlying aspect of it. Like Pan's Labyrinth. Pan's Labyrinth is not about monsters. Pan's Labyrinth is about the horrors of the Spanish Civil War that were occurring. Like that's the whole thing. It's just everything else is set dressing for it. And I think it was a very similar thing where it was like it was about death, the acceptance of death, having to grieve as a child, to lose, somebody that's very close to you, like the relationship between the granddaughter and the grandfather, and just maybe showing the futility of the pursuit of immortality and how it really isn't what it's cracked up to be. So I think it being a vampire story is secondary to everything else that's going on in it, as opposed to like Underworld or Dracula or anything where that's the forefront of the story is the vampirism.
So it kind of played in the background, so to speak,
while
they're going through all these other inflictions.
Correct. Yeah.
Essentially, that sounds interesting. I'm gonna have to give it a try, and like it looks pretty good as a film from what the trailer looks like. It looks like they dive into a lot of strange things inside the film, and that's what how me and Billy talked about that idea of being inflicted by some sort of thing that you're immortal, but you can live forever, right? But then you have to kill people essentially and drink their blood. You can never get close to somebody unless you also turn them a vampire, because they will die and become old. And then if you turn somebody to a vampire, they might be mad. And you see that with Interview of a Vampire in a lot of different films, is that they're like, you turned me into this thing that I didn't want to be. And then you have to live with that kind of curse.
A lot of it that can be viewed as subtext for, having kids and bringing people into the world only to be doomed to suffer like the rest of us, where it's like I didn't ask for this. Like that weird dynamic that sometimes occurs between parents and teenagers and stuff, where they're like, well, life is this and that, and it's like I never fucking asked for you to give me life. That's on you. You are the fucking cause of this. And I think that was at least the subtext of a lot of like the vampirism, you turned me, I didn't want this type thing. But a lot of vampirism really does just deal with the other, the people that are outside of society. That's why it's like, yes, you have certain vampire films that are the isolated vampire. There's the one, like a Salem's Lot, or like Nosferatu, or like Dracula, where there's one big main villain or villain monster, and everyone else is just dealing with that. But then you have also stuff like Underworld and things like that, or Blade, where you have entire societies of the other. Yeah,
I don't know. We're on Blade. You want to talk about Blade? Because
Blade 2 is also a Guillermo del Toro vampire film.
What? Blade
Guillermo
2
del Toro directed Blade 2. That's the reason that
awesome.
the vampires in Blade 2, not the main ones, but the secondary vampires, are basically the same. They are the design that he made of the vampires.
Talking about like the open up the jaw shit.
Yeah. that's what the vampires look like in the Strain. Is they have this thing and a stinger that shoots out of their mouth.
I remember as a kid watching Blade 2 specifically, and not like it. Another movie that my mom showed me. She watched Blade with me, which is like, now she'd probably be like, oh, I wouldn't have shown you that, but I was fairly young and I was like, this is fucking awesome. It's bloody, it's gory, and then the second one, I remember watching it as like probably a very young preteen or teenager, and when the jaw opens up, I was like, I fucking do not like that vampire. I don't like that version. It's fucking far creepier.
Well, they were like abominations. They were subsects of the vampires that were, I don't remember, how were they created? Wasn't it like some weird experiment gone wrong or something like that the vampires were trying to make a hybrid or something? And then it's been a while since I've seen Blade 2. I just remember Norman Reedus being a bad guy. Spoiler alert.
I only watched this not that long ago. I can't remember how they come to get created.
I'll give it a peek. So how did you guys get into Blade? Like, when did you guys discover that? Like the weird like vampire hunter, but also still half vampire aspect of it. Because this Blade was around the time that we were getting stuff like John Carpenter's Vampires and the semi-sympathetic, but you're still a monster, so I'm gonna destroy you kind of.
Aren't they redoing it too? Right, that guy with a very like I can't.
Yeah, they're doing a new Blade.
Yeah, the guy I can never pronounce this guy's name.
Something Ali, something like that. Yeah, for me, I actually think I got the Blade soundtrack before I saw the movie.
Wow.
And I remember being like, okay, this is like the best soundtrack I've ever listened to. And then being fascinated that poster that you put up on screen a second ago, I remember always seeing that and being like, what is this about? I don't really understand. And then eventually, I think I was allowed to watch the opening scene, right? Is the one with the blood rave.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I remember being allowed to see that. And then when it really got crazy, they were like, nope. Yeah. They're like, nope, forget about that. You're not watching it. So it was like another year maybe. And when I finally saw that, I became like obsessed. Like even still to now, while a lot of people who love vampire movies and stuff and things like Dracula kind of shit on Blade and that whole story, I enjoy it. I think it's just good fun.
I was super into the Blade films a lot.
Yeah, it doesn't follow any real lore or anything. Like it just makes up its own shit. It's just an action movie.
Kick-ass.
Yeah, and I know Blade Trinity got a lot of shit as well because like they bring Dracula into it, and like I enjoy it because it's so bad. If that makes sense.
Ryan Reynolds is the shit, man.
I don't think them bringing Dracula into it was the main point of contention of Blade Trinity, but
but like
can we make Ryan Reynolds in this film make everybody laugh?
Fucking Triple H being a bad
Triple
guy.
H with the metal fangs.
Oh yeah, Triple H is in it.
Yeah.
Parker Posey is in it, which anything she's in, I will watch.
I like the Blade movies. I just like that whole idea of like something that when I was a young kid, I probably would have pretended to be. We're gonna kill these vampires. You're like a fucking 10-year-old kid because it's something that's kind of cool. And I think Wesley Snipes does a good job of like this. I don't know, this like brooding character that's kind of like he just beats the shit out of anybody and you don't really mess with him. And he's always like tough throughout the whole movies where you like are constantly rooting for him to like kick some ass.
So you want to know the fun thing is that where Wesley Snipes drew the inspiration for the character Blade?
Where?
He's just a piece of shit. That's where he drew it from. He's that much of an asshole in real life, apparently. Everyone, like that famous scene in Blade Trinity where he refused to open his fucking eyes, so they CG'd them on.
What? Is that true?
Yeah. No, they're like, so he would not leave character. Everyone had to address him as Blade. Like, he's apparently a fucking nightmare to work with.
Yeah, during the press run for that, somebody interviewed Ryan Reynolds and they were like, what was it like meeting Wesley Snipes and getting to work with him and stuff like that? And he goes, who? And they were like, Wesley Snipes, the lead character, Blade. And he was like, oh no, I've never met Mr. Snipes. I've only met Blade.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, dude.
That's and of course, saying Ryan Reynolds would say, I didn't know that. See, I didn't. Same way where the one day I was yelling at Billy. I think it's on the Spring Heel Jack episode where we were talking about that Michael Jordan is an asshole. And then I messaged Anton. I was like, Michael Jordan's a fucking asshole, right? And then Anton's like, yeah, he's like, everyone's knows him as kind of like a dick. And then Blade's like, no, he was the champ, man. Like he was like, I'm like, no, in real life, everybody didn't like this dude.
He's also a fucking dickhead. Apparently,
we argued for like 20 minutes. It's just like I'm surprised that Wesley Snipes is. I'm actually not surprised.
So I got the origin on this, Tom, and I feel like you're gonna like this.
Okay.
The Reaper virus was developed to strengthen and increase the lethality of vampires, and the Reaper is sort of an updated version that does away with some of the weaknesses that vampires have to contend with. So basically, vampires tried to make themselves into daywalkers. Like Blade.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And they fucked it up and they created the Reapers, which the Reapers can just murder vampires indiscriminately. Because Blade 2 is the one that starts out with they're bringing some homeless person into a blood bank or whatever. They're like, oh no, if you donate blood, you get X amount of dollars, blah, blah, blah. And it's just slaughter rooms of them, just like hooking these people up and draining them. And then the Reaper goes through or he's the one that they bring through and he just wipes out a good portion of them.
It's funny. I pictured Aaron would really enjoy this film when he was a kid.
Wesley Snipes. I actually done a podcast, maybe about a year and a half ago, and we talked about Blade and just that whole thing. And like, I'm just thinking of stuff here now. Like I think he tried to beat the shit out of the director in Blade Trinity.
Really?
Like, I don't
know. David Goyer. Is that his name?
Okay, I think so. Yeah.
He had to hire bodyguards, and then for the rest of the production, they would communicate through post-it notes. They didn't speak for any of the rest of it. There was a really famous reporter from I can't remember what magazine it was from. They showed up like on the final week of shooting, and he I think he might have actually outed himself afterwards, like he gave his name and stuff, but at the time it was like an anonymous thing that Wesley Snipes wouldn't refer to anyone by their names. He would be like you or her or whatever, and apparently like multiple times referred to Ryan Reynolds as that cracker.
That's
he would say things like, tell that cracker to get out of my eye line, or tell that cracker to remember his lines.
Imagine Ryan Reynolds hearing that shit. He'd be like, we don't have this in Canada, at least not before Trudeau's around.
Yeah, and apparently, like, there's a lot of interviews out there where people talk about working with him, and they said, like, it was just that bizarre that, like, everybody just kind of went along with it. Like, he would sit in his trailer for, like, 10 hours a day and
smoking crack.
Smoke crazy amounts of weed.
What?
And then just, like, show up out of nowhere and be like, right, I'm ready to work. And then like disappear again, and like would disappear for like 2 days. Fuck? Yeah, like, and after all that, like he tried to sue the production company for $5 million, and like he tried to say that like the executives are racist and the director was a racist, and that's the only reason they were doing this to him and all this shit.
I'm sure that had nothing to do with him desperately needing money to pay back the IRS.
Yeah, I know, right?
That's fucking crazy.
I spend all my money on weed and dumb shit. So
I feel like that could be an episode in its own, because like I didn't know any of that shit.
There's and like that's only like that's not even scratching.
I think we should do an episode about that alone, because that's fucking hilarious.
That's just the tip of the Wesley Snipes as a douchebag iceberg.
We'll just have an episode called "Fuck Wesley Snipes."
He was who's the chick in Blade Trinity? There's you have Blade, you've got Ryan Reynolds, and then there's that female character. He was like
is it Jessica Biel?
Yeah, Jessica Biel.
It's Whistler's daughter, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Whistler's daughter, yeah.
Yeah. So apparently like they had the script or whatever done, and then like one day he shows up to set and he's like, yeah, I was just thinking last night, I was like brainstorming ideas, and I think I want to do a sex scene with Blade and Whistler's daughter. And everybody's like,
wait, Wesley Snipes said that?
Yeah. And they were like, wait, what's going on? And he was like, yeah, no, I think it'd be really good to like further the story and like the whole thing with Blade and Whistler and his daughter. And they were like, no, but we're in the middle of what do you mean? Like, we're not. He's like, yeah, no, it's just notes I have. And apparently he went on about this for weeks. like he kept pushing this, kept bringing it up, kept saying it to people, was like telling his agent and his secretary and stuff.
I feel like fame delusions people. Like, that's fucking weird.
Yeah, I didn't realize that he was like as psychotic, and apparently like Blade was one of the things that he was like the worst on. Like he really embraced that, and it's weird because the character of Blade, I know he's like kind of like a little bit of a cold asshole, but like he's not really like that bad.
No,
yeah, so it's not like he's playing his character from Demolition Man, where it's like, oh, you're just nuts.
But I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah, that's weird. I didn't know all that stuff. And that's like what I'm saying, where it could be just even an hour talking about that, because that's fucking like, I didn't know any of that shit. I knew he was a dick and he got himself in some weird troubles, but nothing like where it's like people couldn't stand being on set with him.
I only knew that he was very difficult to work with. But in addition to that, like the IRS shit, I know that he just refused to pay taxes and went to prison for it because of it.
Because earlier we mentioned Salem's Lot, I was thinking about how I don't like it as another film that people are gonna be like, what the fuck, why? I like, or a series, whatever you want to call it. I didn't like it as much as I thought I would rewatching it as I was older. I felt like some of it was drawn out and really boring, but the bedroom scene with the kid will always be extremely creepy, and the vampire I think is creepy. Like that aspect of it is well done, but I feel like the story, because they drew it out, is... And I could get shit on for 100% for thinking that, but I don't know if I just need to give it more of a chance. Right?
Any bedroom window scene that I see in any vampire movie, just my mind immediately goes to the Buffy the Vampire Slayer film.
Yeah,
let me in. I'm hungry. You're freaking floating, man. You're floating.
I just saw that. See, I was just watching that, and I also watched most of the original Fright Night.
Classic.
I actually really like the remake, and Chelsea, I like the remake because I like that kid that got pinned in that fucking car.
Anton Yelchin. Yeah, let's not. R.I.P. He was great. I love everything.
I think that we might do a Famous Dead series on him eventually, just because that idea is fucking crazy.
Horrible story though.
And he just got hit. Like, how does that happen? How does that that's your?
Because nobody knew. Like, if somebody would have known that he was doing that, then he probably could have been treated and not died. But he was pinned for like 3 days.
That shit is fucking beyond me.
Crazy.
Yeah. I like the remake because fucking like what's his name? Fagel. I can't remember his name in real life. The guy that's in Superbad, and he's like his friend. And then
Christopher Mintz.
That's his name. I always call him Fogel.
Yeah.
I like it. I like that dude.
Red Mist and Kick-Ass,
oh yeah,
right?
and he was good in like role models and stuff. Like he is like I like him for what he is as an actor.
Yeah. Not very big with ladies, are you?
But he would like turn into a vampire and then he cut off his arm, and it's just a fun film, and I like that guy.
Yeah.
Also,
Pharaoh.
Did you guys like that? Okay, I liked Fright Night. The original is pretty good, but I actually I think it's the originals for what it is.
I'll stare at David Tennant in anything. So I mean,
I was like, that's the guy from Princess Bride. That's the first thing I thought. Is the vampire in the original one? He's the prince that tries to marry.
Oh my God, he is.
Brings us together, and then that guy standing there, Prince Humperdinck.
Oh my God, Prince fucking Humperdinck.
That's what I was like. That's the first. I was like, oh, that's Prince Humperdinck, man, and he's a vampire in this.
Mostly dead. So I again, Salem Lot thing. Everyone knows my opinion on Stephen King, so I'm not going to reiterate it.
Oh, he killed John Lennon, right?
No, Stephen King is Stephen King is great at writing short stories.
Yeah.
Stephen King unfortunately takes all of his short stories and turns them into 700-page books.
Aaron, did you know that?
Tom has the theory that fucking Stephen King is actually Mark David Chapman.
If you look at Mark David Chapman and Stephen King, they look very similar, okay? And I read this thing, and this guy was driving around the States in a van, okay? I've said this on the podcast before, or at least on my show and our show. And then essentially, like, it's plastered all over that Stephen King, or Mark David Chapman was a patsy, and then Stephen King is actually just a ghostwriter, and he was put into fame, and he was used like a Manchurian candidate and fucking killed John Lennon for the CIA.
This is real.
This is somebody believes this.
Fucking crackpot theory.
Somebody believes this shit, and I just was like, it always stuck with me. I was like, weird. They look similar.
George W. Bush is actually Ted Bundy. So
That could be true. You don't know, man.
Hey, look at the picture of George W. Bush and Ted Bundy next to each other. They look way closer than fucking Stephen King and Mark David Chapman. So by your own goddamn cockamamie theory.
I'm just looking up the two of these now. Yeah, I mean,
they look similar, don't they?
Yeah, I guess.
Chapman was actually just denied parole again not that long ago, like within the last month or so. I want to say
he was. That's another episode for another day. In fact, but that whole thing is strange in general. But like I like Fright Night because it was good. It's like the whole like they always relate to like this teenage like Buffy the Vampire Slayer type style, which people always seem to enjoy. Is like a kid scared, sees something, wants to battle it. You know, like Monster Squad, similar in that way too. And that has.
I don't know that Buffy is really in that same vein though. She's never scared of fighting. Buffy's just Buffy.
Yeah, she's Buffy.
Even in the original, when it's Christy Swanson, she's more annoyed that she has to do this instead of like, afraid.
And so also, obviously,
this era we're in Fright Night. Let's talk about Near Dark.
I actually really liked that movie. It was my first viewing. I feel like maybe when I was a kid, I watched it, but Anton suggested it, so I watched it, and I actually thoroughly enjoyed it. It is a good film in the way that they portray vampires and the story and what it leads you on. And as everyone else can mention, I'll just say the ending it would trip me out when the boy is catching on fire and he kind of loves the young girl, and it's a film that is pretty. It's a good film.
So it's not as though there was some weird,
Yeah. It was I liked that fucking shit. That was it was trippy. It was a good scene.
Oh, Aaron, that right?
I don't know what was going on with my mic there. I love Near Dark, but again, and for a couple of years, I don't know why it like overshadowed for me, and I only started to revisit it again recently.
Yeah.
I started to hate Bill Paxton.
Really?
Yeah, for a while. I don't know why. I don't know. It's like I had seen something about him on like Twister or something like that, and he was meant to be like a bit of a dick, and I was like, oh, fuck him.
I'm not a huge fan of him either. I like this film for what it was, and the idea that the whole thing when they're in the van and they're like covering all the windows and like shooting the guns and shit, like that scene is iconic. That's pretty cool. And then the kid like is out in the sunlight, and then you just see him like that whole effect scene.
Smoking.
I thought was really well done because it still kind of looks like him, and he's like just slowly walking as he's like bursting into flames, and that was a very cool just scene and to do with vampires because the fact that you see him slowly just I don't know, he disappears and blows up, and it's just like, and the little girl is like, everyone's trying not to watch. The one guy's kind of a vampire, so he's trying to like the whole ending scene was fairly cool. I thought the one guy's burning up as he's trying to drive.
I would probably go as far as to say that I prefer Near Dark than I do Lost Boys.
Okay.
Yeah. That's also what I was going to bring up, because Lost Boys is a very, everyone knows that movie. I feel like if you know a vampire movie.
Now here's my thing with Lost Boys, Tom. Lost Boys beats Interview with the Vampire for gayest vampire film ever.
You really think so?
Lost Boys is directed by Joel Schumacher. Let's get that right out the fucking gate, okay? Joel Schumacher is the man that put nipples on Batman because
we've talked
homosexuals, we love ripped torsos. I'm sorry, but it's a stereotype for a reason. It's
but like, what do you find as the super the I'm trying to think. I guess the
every aspect of it. Kiefer Sutherland is trying to fuck David the entire movie.
Yeah,
like the girl is a secondary character. That weird love story is that scene.
Showing the scene of the jazz player thrusting.
That guy still shows up at conventions in like the UK and stuff.
So
I think it was last year they had him at a big horror convention in Manchester in England called For the Love of Horror, and it's become like this huge convention that lasts like 4 or 5 years.
This guy shows up with a saxophone.
Yeah, they had him perform, and he was sold out the whole weekend. All his signings were sold out. All his photo ops were sold out. His show was sold out. Like
people love that dude for that one scene.
Sexy sax man, dude. He's iconic.
That's so weird. So weird thing. And I can agree that movie. And like Lost Boys has its good points and its bad points, but that idea also of being like a teenager. And it's a lot of those movies are like that, where they lure you kind of in, where you can live forever and be as beautiful as you are right now.
Well, a lot of that too, with him drinking the blood, that was an AIDS allegory.
And
there's literally an entire group of teenage boys that do nothing but hang out and party with each other all day.
Yeah.
So.
And this guy, don't ever forget the sax man. And obviously, and you have movies, because I feel like we should start slowly bringing it to a close. Is like we have movies like From Dusk Till Dawn, right? This idea too of like action-packed vampire movie. You know what I mean? And
that is the Evil Dead of vampire movies.
Yeah.
I would rate that as a siege movie more than I would rate that as a vampire film. Because the vampires
show up,
crime, and it's a siege film because that is 2/3 of the film.
Them at that thing
trying to get to Mexico.
Sexy party.
With that amazing fucking liquor store scene. I never said help us. That doesn't matter now because you got about 2 fucking seconds to live.
That's not that the worry. I have 6 little friends and they all run faster than you
can.
They all run
hell of a lot faster than you can. Yeah,
that's such a sick scene. I remember that Necro and Mr. Hyde put out a song and they used that as the intro for the song, and I was like, it's a fucking crazy scene. They all can run faster than you can. Like that.
Everybody, be cool. You be cool.
The Getty
brothers are great. Like they were such a pair in film. So I got a weird one, and I've brought it up to you guys before. Tom, if you want to bring up my screen. So, how many of y'all remember the show Blue's Clues?
Yeah. The guy that didn't he get in trouble with some stuff? Is that him?
That's Steve from Blue's Clues.
Did he not get in trouble for some like?
No, he did not. No, shh.
I can't hear anything though.
Oh, you can't hear it?
Oh, I never could hear the first one. That's why I kept talking.
Oh, that's shitty then.
This looks fucking weird, man.
Jason Mewes is in this.
Really? I actually would watch it just for the fact that Jason Mewes is in it.
Well, if you can't hear the audio, then there's no reason for me to continue to play. So basically,
Nether looks weird and cheap.
It's a weird, it's a weird reimagining of the vampire lore done in the style of nether beasts. So they eat human flesh, they drink human blood because drinking it is not enough to sustain it. They all work in this one building that's this phone company. They only leave like once in a while. They don't let anybody new come in. They get like all of their food sourced from like medical schools and stuff. And it's Daryl Hammond, Jason Mewes, Judd Nelson
I have to watch this
from Blue's Clues.
Oh, Judd Nelson.
The one girl from 10 Simple Rules for Dating My Teenage Daughter is in it.
Wow.
It's so fucking, it's great. There's this, the one scene where they're in a board.
Have you seen this, Aaron?
Nope.
No?
I've never seen this either.
Oh, dude.
I was just looking at it here. It's like, I've never even heard of it.
It sounds weird, and there's so many people in it. I love Jason Mewes.
I found this for like $1. Oh, Dave Foley from fucking Kids in the Hall is in it too.
Oh, that's crazy.
I bought it for like $1.75 at a just random movie place that we used to go to, like a media play type thing. I don't know if you guys ever had that, like a Sam Goody or Sunrise Tom style.
Yeah.
And I grabbed it and I was like, oh, Dave Foley, Daryl Hammond, Jason Mewes. Cool, I'll check this out. Not realizing that the name Steve was on there and that was who it was. I watched the whole thing and it was like, that was really fucking weird. And I really enjoyed that. And then I threw on the bonus features and Steve's sitting there and he's like, yeah, after I got fired for going bald on Blue's Clues. And I was like, no fucking way. Oh my God.
I heard that something happened.
Yeah, you did hear because everyone says a bunch of dumb shit whenever somebody gets fucking fired. That it's like, oh, this happened.
Chelsea, have you heard about the Blue's Clues guy having something wrong? Didn't he get arrested? You remember that?
No.
All right, well, I remember it.
It didn't. Yeah, I'm sure you remember hearing it, but it didn't happen. That's what I'm saying. That is the rumor mill.
Did you tell me also Pee Wee Herman did not get caught in the room jerking off? He didn't get caught either, right?
Paul Rubens. Okay, so here's the thing with Paul Rubens. Paul Rubens did get caught jerking off in the theater, but that was a porno theater. What the fuck else are you doing there? But Paul Rubens did get pegged with some pictures on his computer, so that is a problem.
That's so sad. Like, I love Pee Wee Herman. They still did a movie with him, so he's not in that much trouble.
Yeah, he never got canceled the second time, but yeah.
I'm gonna have to check that out. I do think that to end it, we should talk more or less about what we do in the shadows. But also, I wanted to slip in this one quickly. Is you guys ever seen The Vampire's Assistant?
So that was actually a really good film.
I liked it a lot.
And I'm disappointed they never made sequels to it because I genuinely enjoyed that, and I'd never read the book.
Have you seen it, Aaron?
No, I was just about to say I've never seen it. I've seen like that poster, and like I had the exact same reaction that I had before as I did right now, which would be, no, it looks like Twilight or some shit. No, I don't like it.
Kind of, but not quite. And John C. Reilly's fantastic in it.
John C. Reilly's so good in that movie. You have to actually check it out. Vampire Assistant is well done. But like, I think to end it on some comedy, I loved What We Do in the Shadows, the movie. It made me very chuckle. And then the fact that I watched it, thought it was very funny. And then I made Billy watch it and his girlfriend. And then Billy was like laughing the whole time because he loves the dudes that made Flight of the Conchords.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then it's just genius the way they play on the jokes of the vampire. Motherfuckers like vacuuming a short film, right? Did they not? And they're doing it around town. That's what I heard. Before
the short film ever became a thing. So Taika and Jermaine, Taika would show up to open mic stand-ups at in New Zealand, and he would go on stage as a vampire and start telling jokes. And Jermaine would be in the audience also as a vampire and start killing him.
That's fucking awesome.
Yeah, or Taika's like, boy, I flew in from Transylvania and man, are my arms tired.
That's
Come on, guys, be positive. And like Jermaine would be like, these jokes are fucking older than my coffin, you piece of shit.
Aaron, tell me you've seen this show and the movie. Have you seen the movie?
Yeah. And I probably only seen it in like the last 12 months.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it was one of those things, again, it was one of those things that like so many people always recommended. I always heard people talk about it, and I was like, oh yeah, I'll get to it at some point. It's on like my watch list. And then eventually I was like, wait, there's too many people talking about this constantly for me not to actually give it the time. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's fantastic.
And I do really enjoy like the movie of like just like there's so many funny things when he bites the fucking chicken. He puts all his fucking spread out.
All the paper.
He's got like all of like these newspapers and like plastic to make sure the blood doesn't go too far on their furniture. And then when he bites in your neck and it just starts squirting, like everyday like fables of what it would be like to be a vampire. Like you have to clean, you have roommates, so you're gonna have to argue with them because the way they do things. And it is that whole idea. Deep in, I brought up to fucking Aaron, is that movie Vampires Suck. It is so bad. It's one of those stupid, scary movies. But some of the scenes genuinely just make me laugh because I've seen Twilight. In fact, they were talking about vampire because it must be brought up eventually. And that he's like in the comedy movie, he's like riding, how he's like, what's his name? Robert Pattinson floats. And then the dude comes in on the Vampire Suck movie and he's on, that was one of those sad. Segway. You seen it, Anton? It's so dumb.
Yeah, I've seen Vampires.
He's like, I don't want to be part of this.
No, you kept glitching.
It's dumb, but it's fucking funny.
So,
I didn't.
Have you ever seen
All right, well, at least the audio sound. It's funny, man.
Have you ever seen Suck?
No. Is that a 1987 porno?
Good night,
Suck. It's just called
Suck is a vampire. It's a pseudo vampire musical about this group of people who are in a band, and part of it takes place in Buffalo, and they're in a band that they're all like 35, 40. The band's going fucking nowhere, and they're all still like have these delusions of the rock star dream, and Atlas Cooper plays the bartender at the place, and he I can't remember if it's him. No. So he doesn't turn the first person. The girl in the band gets turned by this dude that she's going to hook up with. And then she slowly but surely starts turning people in the band, and they start getting really popular because she has that vampiric charisma. And
maybe I do remember that. It sounds familiar.
The audio, but like Alex Lifeson from Rush is in it. Iggy Pop is in it. Henry Rollins is in it.
So many vampires
in it.
There's so many things out there, and like I was looking at this other movie called Vamp, and I feel like I remember pieces of it, but I don't really. It's like my faint memory.
Why the fuck am I drawing a blank on her name?
I was like, this actually doesn't look that bad.
Gracie Jones.
It doesn't look that bad either. And I was like, oh, this looks familiar because it just everything's being brought up now because I've watched so many goddamn vampire things. But what we do in the shadows, because it's so current, I feel like is doing a very good job at like everyone knows vampires. It's something in our culture now. It forever will be. There's if they look back in history, they're gonna be like, man, these people love things that suck. And because it is weird how often it's like a stack. You could like literally fill an entire like vault full to the tits with vampire movies because how many there are. And I thought what we do in the shadows, I'm on to like the halfway through, I think the first season because I love the movie and I got to
not even
consistently watch it. Yeah. I might be almost in the second season.
I came across that film like maybe a month after it had been released on DVD and grabbed it simply based because Jermaine was in it. And I was like, oh, I fucking love Jermaine Clement. I love Flight of the Conchords. I love Mighty Boosh. I love the IT Crowd. Anything that Matt Berry is in, I will consume 20 times over. And
the Mighty Boosh, I haven't heard anyone mention that in so long.
Everyone only knows old Greg. That seems to be the only one knows the Mighty Boosh. But it's like, no, it's a whole series. That
you love me? Can you learn to love me, my fuzzy little man bitch?
There's a couple of other movies as well that and I might get some shit for some of these that I did enjoy. Dracula Untold.
Okay.
I have to rewatch it. I feel like it bored me slightly when I
like at the same time, I don't think
you can enjoy it. It's okay, man.
I thought I did. I enjoy the spin they put on it. I think maybe the idea of it more than I actually enjoyed the execution of the movie. Blackwater Vampire. I enjoyed that as well. It's like a shitty found footage.
Ooh.
I love found footage, so
yeah, found footage is a great medium.
That's a segue into you and Anton's episode.
I'm to the point that like you could tell me there's a found footage movie about like a fucking haunted sneaker, and I'd be like, oh yeah, sign me up.
Down for that.
The same director that gave us Rubber.
The Night Flyer.
The Night Flyer. Okay, so I don't know that I've ever seen the Night Flyer, but I know the image, like the bat-faced man. So what was the deal with Night Flyer?
Without giving too much away, because I feel like that's one I would really recommend people check out. I'd like to see people's opinions on that. There's this airfield that we see towards the start of the movie. There's some murders that take place that start to be investigated. And then at first, they're kind of like, oh, it's just like an isolated incident, whatever. Then there's a second airfield, like another town or two over, or whatever it is. These are not now. This is not like an airport or anything. It's like these shitty little
airpads.
Yeah. And another two people go missing, and they show up murdered, and they notice that both of their bodies have been drained of all their blood. Okay. And then it kind of takes off from there. If I say too much more, it kind of gives away a lot of like the core plot. I think it's worth checking out. I think when I first saw this, I was sold just on the image alone because it's quite grotesque.
Yeah,
this is like hideous.
Yep.
And I think just the idea, I've always been kind of into. I love road movies, but I also love movies like Red Eye.
So do I.
Flight Plan, anything that's set in like
Final Destination.
Speaking of road movies, Stakeland.
Yeah, that's a very good movie. That's a good shout, actually.
Yeah, that one I did not expect anything good out of, and then watched that and the sequel and was like, these are fucking solid vampire flicks as well as being good road movies too. Yeah.
And never get talked about.
Steak.
It really is like a weird unknown type thing where nobody seems to give it the love that it deserves. But yeah, all you listeners, please check out Stakeland if you're into vampire films, which I'm hoping that you are if you've sat through this long of us talking. But
I know, and I feel like it could have been literally 2 parts because how many you can't I feel like we could just keep going for like 2 hours considering just how much.
Yeah, I don't know.
There,
I might have to leave.
There's another one, a more recent one, Blood Red Sky.
I saw that and I didn't know if it was a vampire movie because I remember seeing it's all about a sickness on a plane.
Yeah,
so it seemed like to me it's
hijackers. Mysterious illness and a group of terrorists try to hijack a transatlantic flight. Again, I love the setting of the whole thing. Don't really know if it's a vampire movie. It's billed as a vampire movie.
Okay. You said Blood Red Sky?
Yeah.
Okay. Adding that to the list.
Before we
It's
go,
on
actually,
Netflix.
I wanted to ask: have either of you guys seen Morbius?
I was gonna watch it, debating on renting it. Not yet. Have you seen it?
Have I seen it?
Yeah.
No. I've heard nothing but bad things. I actually, when I was flying to New York, they did have it on the flight, and I put it on, and I was like kind of half asleep and like
You
not
didn't
really
watch
listening.
it? I would have
But,
tried to.
from the bits I seen, I was just like, oh god, this is just another one of those like.
It looked bad from the
Yeah, I just kept having
trailer.
flashbacks of him playing Joker, and I was like, oh.
He's like ruined his like career, and he's now a cult
Yep.
leader and shit.
Yep.
Oh, Anton, you're gone. Nobody can hear you. Nobody can hear you. What happened to Anton? Man, you're cursed, man. You are cursed. You have the vampire curse. When we're bringing this close, you fucking.
Does that mean we're vampires or he's vampires?
I think that Anton's the vampire one out of all of us. And
Yeah.
he still can't say shit. And the thing is, too, is like this seems to like happen every so often. And then Anton just has that worried face, and then he figures it out eventually. There you go. I can hear you. How does that happen?
Weird. I don't know why that's okay. All right. Fuck, that totally derailed my train of thought. So I was saying so for that, I watched the Keanu Reeves The Day the Earth Stood Still in the same way, where it was like I was on a plane, it was free, I threw it on and was just like, this is a trip.
I actually kind of like that film.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
I don't know why, because I like the original, and I was like, this is okay.
So this will be the last time we ask Tom to talk about films because he has shit taste. No.
Hey, it's okay for people like stupid things.
It's very okay for people to like stupid things. There's plenty of dumb shit to like.
I feel like there could be an episode on its own of like doing specific vampire movies, or like, you know, I even watched stuff like Dracula 2000, which I did not hold up. It was pretty awful. And I just, maybe it's just my opinion. I loved it as I was a kid, and I didn't like it. Like when I kind of started rewatching, it was like free on YouTube. So I was like, clicked it.
If there is anyone that's really interested in that, this is going to be a shameless plug. I actually interviewed the guy who wrote and directed that trilogy.
I'm not saying it's that bad, but
the remake of My Bloody Valentine. He was the editor on the Scream trilogy. He was Wes Craven's editor for a long, long time.
What's that dude's name?
Patrick Lussier.
Okay, yeah.
He's a Canadian guy, actually.
We don't like Canadians on this show.
Super interesting guy to talk to, but you can kind of tell from the interview as well when he talks about that Dracula trilogy. It was just kind of like, yeah, we just kind of.
It doesn't. I looked at the other ones because you said this prior to this show, and we talked about that and how you interviewed him. And I said that like I watched Dracula 2000 when I was a kid. I remember with my mom, and I liked it. It was over the top. It's Gerard Butler as fucking Dracula, right? And then you got like they're in the plane. Like the idea of the film was cool, but I thought it was cool when I was a kid. When I rewatched it, it kind of bored me. And I was like, and then I looked at the other episodes that he did, or movies that he did to do with that series, and none of them looked that great.
Well, speaking of other problematic people, wasn't Danny Masterson in Dracula 2000?
Oh, yes, he was. Yeah. I was going to say Mr. Hyde.
Hyde from that 70s show, yeah. Who is definitely a less than stellar human being in the same vein as James Franco.
Yeah. Oh, I can't. Part of me can't hate James Franco. I'm sorry, but it's just like, I
had the biggest fucking crush on James Franco, but now I'm just going to eye fuck his brother. So.
Like I said to Billy on that one episode, I hate how all my everyone that I adored when I was a kid is either like a predator, and Billy's like shoe fits, and I was like, fuck you. Because even Shia LaBeouf is fucked too now, but he's trying to fix himself with God or something like that. So good for him.
God, don't say that word to me.
We can close it out any way you guys want to. If there's anything else you want to mention, then we'll just get this day going, because I got to go too. I got to get my groceries done. I need some food to nourish myself.
So, top 3 vampire films for each of you. Let's just close it out on that. What are your 3? If you have to recommend films to other people, say you meet somebody that's never seen the genre ever, like an alien comes down and they're like, "Wow, your movies are very cool. I would like to watch more of them. What can I watch? I like monsters." What are your 3?
Well, I got one thing on another episode. I'm gonna, for a Patreon episode, we're gonna talk for 20 minutes about how each of us, if we would be a vampire or not.
Shadow of the Vampire for me, anyway, is definitely
okay. Yeah,
definitely probably one. After that, you see, I feel like I should pick some of the originals and some of the older stuff, but then I'm like, if it was really my choice, Shadow of the Vampire is definitely one. Probably Bram Stoker's Dracula.
That's like the 10th on my list.
Even though in ways I feel like they're the same kind of movie. Jesus, other than that, I actually don't know.
Okay.
What about you, Tom?
My number one is the Little Vampire. I'm just fucking joking. Man, part of me kind of, I'm not saying for number one, part of me kind of does really like this style of movie that Interview with a Vampire is. And the way it makes you think. Mm-hmm. And I watched it when I was like dosed too. So it like it made me think more in depth about the whole characters and shit like that. And I like Fright Night and movies like that. And the thing is too, it's hard to pick one. I genuinely like The Vampire's Assistant as a fucking film. It's hard to go. I don't know, I guess, but it's hard to go with scary because there's other scary films I could go for and say like, if it's based on being scared or is it based on movies I just enjoyed with vampires in it? You know what I mean? I even love Dark Shadows, the movie, because I like Johnny Depp's wine drinking, smashing bottle and ass.
Wine drinking, smashing bottle and ass.
Okay, someone on the chat actually said Nosferatu, fight me, 30 Days of Night, and Daybreakers also fight me.
Daybreakers, get the fuck out of here. That was a steaming pile of shit. I will fight you on that.
That was right. That was so shit. I'm really bad for like buying movie props and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have screen use pieces of like the prop ship from Ghost Ship.
Ooh. Oh, I actually like Ghost Ship.
I have the stunt phone from, do you remember the Sean Bean Hitcher remake?
Yes.
And he takes the dude's flip phone and crushes it in his hand.
Mm-hmm.
I have the phone.
That's fucking so cool.
And stuff like that. And there's a guy I know in the UK that was selling like a load of, I suppose, cool shit from Daybreakers.
Man, it's got Ethan Hawke and William Dafoe, and I've never seen this movie.
And Sam Neill.
I was just like, I just can't. I remember going to see that like the day it came out, like super excited. And I was just like, at the end, it was just like, huh.
That ending is still to this day one of the worst fucking twists I've ever seen in my life, and I will die on this hill.
We'll all die
I was on
board
with most of the movie. I was like, wow, this is weird, like post-apocalyptic vampires run everything. This is like a really cool concept. I just thought in execution that it shit the bed so hard that it was like, yes, I will agree, Ghost Hand. Yes, it was a good concept. The execution was absolute shit though. But yeah, I agree. I would love to see another movie that takes the idea of a full vampire run world and runs with it. No pun intended, but for me, Shadows, What We Do in the Shadows is up there. It's one of my, it's in my top 10 ever films. Like I absolutely adore it. Lost Boys, just, you know, it's there. It's great.
I still like it. The bridge, them hanging from the bridge I love that scene. It's iconic.
And then I will say probably the Werner Herzog Nosferatu is a really good one to show people. Those would be my top three. Like, all right, I'm going to slide these in here. But that's just because I don't want to throw Netherbeast in there, which is a lot of fun for me. Dracula sucks. I've never gotten to see gay Dracula. I only know of its existence, and I'm really hoping I can find it at some point.
I also don't know, before we go, if I ever mentioned that I'm starting a cover-up piece on a tattoo I had. I don't know if you guys can make out what that is.
It kind of looks Wolfmanish, but it also is giving me like.
So it's not like it's only the outline been done over an existing tattoo, but it's the artwork from Bram Stoker's Dracula. And then at the top we have Dracula's castle. You can't really see it because it's just
that's cool.
It's just the outline right now.
Yeah, you guys can finish it off. I actually have to legitimate go. I will leave the stream up running. You guys finish it off.
We can just end it here and call it. It's all wrapped up.
Well, you know where to find us. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Obviously, you guys give your shout outs and stuff like that.
No, Tom, you shout your shit out. This is for our show.
www.strangerootpodcast.com. You know where to find us. We have Aran and Anton on as other. Obviously, now you guys are considered, like, Anton's been a co-host for a while, but I consider now Aran another kind of co-host on the show. So it's essentially the four of us. You know, we're going to be eventually designing a new logo, which will just not really, it'll just encompass everything to do with the podcast. It's going to happen eventually. But yeah, make sure you go check everything out. There's a lot of stuff coming out for Halloween. Obviously, there's a live stream with all of us on it. That'll be October 28th at 6:30. East come out the Halloween weekend.
And Aaron and you and I are releasing the found footage pretty soon, right? That's the plan.
Yeah, whenever you want to do that, I'm game. I was just saying to Tom last week that I'm like refreshed now after being on vacation for 3 weeks.
Hell yeah, man.
Found footage is like, I don't care. That's another thing that I'm willing to die on. I don't give a shit. I love found footage movies. Still do. Still scour the internet looking for, doesn't matter how shit they are. I'll watch it.
No, I'm excited to do that one. And I didn't realize you were so close. You were in Sleepy Hollow, man. I could have met up. Had a drink.
I know, yeah. I'm actually supposed to be going back hopefully next month and potentially then for 3 months in the new year. So
oh hell yeah! We gotta get fucked nuts to make the trip across the border then, and then we'll all hang out.
I gotta leave, man. I gotta go. I got stuff to do. All right. I love you guys. Everybody stay strange.
Peace, guys.
Later.